recording. Okay, it started. I'm gonna post on Discord. I'm gonna go post on the other one. There we go. Okay, should be live. Hello. Good check. Hello. Can you hear us fine? Hello, Akis. We got people popping in. Hello.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Resonance.
Gonna also open it up so I can make sure everything's okay. Good messages popping in.
Welcome to the Resonance. I'm taking over. This is my co-host Froox.
Like how do things now?
All right, I'm in charge of the Resonance. Today we're gonna talk about why you should always monopack your Don't monopack your protoflux. Don't do that, please. Don't.
Oh yeah, we got Schnopit, and it's not from Grand. It's from the Red Neko.
Grand, you've failed your Schnoppit for today. This is very disappointing.
So, for a question, my Schnoppit is that Grand failed the Schnoppit. There we go, that's the Schnoppit for today.
What do I have today? Schnoppit.
That's the Schnoppit. Anyways, welcome to Resonance. Today, like, I'm a little bit sick, so, like, so it's gonna be probably a bit slower. Well, I will get through things. You feel it's essentially like a podcast slash ask us anything. You can ask any question you want about Resonite, anything with the development, anything with the platform team, like whatever you want to ask. The only thing, make sure that at the end of your question or within the question there's a question mark that it kind of pops in our thing. So if you do that, it's gonna pop on our thing. We do have a bunch of questions from Discord as well, so like we're gonna go through those first. Also, it's possible we might like end this one like a little bit early, depending how things go. So with that, like we should be able to get started.
Yeah, I mean, would you like me to read some of them if you want to split up the work of reading and answering?
I can read it out. I just need to like put one for myself. So Tito is asking, how does one resist the urge to RFAG when you have no other solutions left for your design or desired output? Do we wait or accept defeat? So one of the things that kind of happen like this, there definitely are cases like where like there's no alternate solutions, but one thing we find a lot of times when people do want to use RF hacking, there's actually a different approach they could use, but it requires you to sort of step back and sort of look at like how you're designing things, because like you might have like designed yourself into like particular hole where where the only solution for you is to use RF hacking if you really want to approach do certain thing. But a lot of the times, if you take a few steps back and sort of like look at a sort of bigger picture, there might be like a different approach.
Yeah, oftentimes it can look like a real, everything starts looking like a nail once you start doing that. You kind of forget how to do things normally for a little while.
This happens a lot, like when I like design stuff for Resonite too. It's like I'll like make particle design decisions and then like work down how's it gonna work for this and this. And so the decisions they end up like essentially putting you in a corner. And that the corner is literally hard to get out of without like some really nasty stuff. But oftentimes the solution is to like, go further back and change the design decision so you don't end up in the corner in the first place. And it happens a lot with engineering, and like this is kind of no different. The next question is from Phoenix. Phoenix is asking, last stream you talked about a bit about making WebAssembly components. How do you imagine syncing staying across network between WASM and runtimes? I imagine things like texture printing tool, the Resonite painting engine, return consolidator can do multiplayer or scope, much simpler, more stateless, almost stateless things, more like pure functions. So one of the beauties of Froox engine is it handles synchronization implicitly for you. And by declaring a component, you're essentially defining a data model. Like you're defining how that component is modeled. And Froox engine will automatically replicate that state for you. The code for that like either mutates that state or reacts to that state, it doesn't need to care about synchronization at all. Because that's sort of like, already kind of solved problem. And this is gonna follow pretty much the same principle. It's like you're gonna have your data model definition, how's your component defined, what data it has, and then have your code that either mutates that state or or just reacts to it. Like, does makes certain things happen when it's in certain values. And that pretty much makes it so pretty much most of the time you don't have to worry about networking at all. Only reason you'd worry about networking is more for like optimizing the flow and so on. There's like certain things, like for example, retro console emulator, where we would probably introduce new primitives because usually you don't want to synchronize the entire state. And there's like for console emulators, there's like two ways to approach the synchronization. I would like consider like the primary ones. One of them is you just have a single user run the emulation, and then you use video streaming to synchronize the video output to other users. So that one, we'll essentially set it up. So only, for example, the host is simulating it, and other users just the video texture, and you have like something that you have like data model that specifies the inputs from other players, so it can react to that. The other approach is using something called lockstep synchronization, and we'll probably introduce more primitives for that kind of thing, where there's like primitives that guarantee that for each step like of your update, all the values are the same for each of the users. And it'll be kind of the same thing. You just model it, you say this needs to be lockstep. It is, the update function. It takes care of the rest for you. And it's a kind of good way. It does introduce latency for everyone because it needs to make sure that every user has every other user's input before simulating the next step of the simulation. But pretty much generally, synchronization is handled on very sort of like high level, like on Froox engine. It's one of the kind of like biggest strengths of the engine because even when we make components and we make stuff, like 99.9% of the time we don't even think about network synchronization. It just works DM.
It's really useful for like when I'm like on my own writing mods too, because I can just be like, set this value to like 5, and I know that that value is going to be the same for everyone because it just happens. It's just part of the world.
Yes. Next question is also from Phoenix. Why does opening the dev inspector cause so much hitching? So there's like a bunch of things. It essentially generates lots of UI elements, which is heavy against the data model. It creates a lot of GC pressure, triggering the garbage collector, so that kind of like causes slowness. And it's like multiple ways. One of the things, it also uses a lot of reflection. And one of the things we noticed is with the unit is mono, the more reflection is used, the slower it gets. It feels like it's like we haven't like looked into specifically why, but my guess is it kind of builds a list that just kind of keep expanding and is not implemented efficiently at all. So once we do the switch to .NET 9, that's very likely going to help a fair bit, just making reflection go be faster, making the cost run faster, making the garbage collector handle GC pressure much better too. And we'll also be reworking the UI eventually to like use more efficient approaches. Next question is from Missing. Missing is asking, would you allow creators of assets that are currently sold on Gumroad Jinxie boot to change the usage rates to their asset after original purchase. The original store page didn't mention any limitations in the Resonite. For example, if original page didn't mention anything about public avatars or explicitly allowed it to make public avatars that creator now wanted to restrict the sharing of that asset avatars in Resonite, would you comply and change licensing game? So that's probably gonna depend on case by case basis, because I think like it essentially depends like what does the because the creator, they have like rights on how their asset gets distributed. They are the ones who set the license. But there's also like so if the creator has a right, we need to kind of comply with that because it's their legal right to like ensure the assets are only being distributed contrary to like how they're like licensed it. They are the ones who made it. They're the ones who owns the right. They are the ones like who decide how that goes. The only caveat is like if there's cases where they did specify some rights and say somebody bought the asset with certain like usage rights and they decide to change them, then it's like there's more of a legal question: is can they change it afterwards? Can they like forbid the user from using it after buying it with a different set of terms? And that like we probably need to like consult like with like legal stuff and see like who actually has the right there and who doesn't. Like I don't think I don't really know the answer to that one right now. So because it feels like intuitively like if you buy it with certain like usage rights, um, then they kind of like go like after you've already paid them, and then they decide to change the rights, um, on the usage, like to something you haven't like. Essentially, they changed the sort of not EULA, but the terms of service. They change it afterwards. You've already made your purchase. That kind of make it unable to use it. I don't know how that kind of works legally. So that would kind of depend, however that works out. Next question is from Golden Raccoon. What are technical difficulties of implementing proper SVG support for Resonite? So it kind of depends how you want the SVG support to be approached. The simple one would be you essentially just similar to the PDF support, where you just like render it into a texture. You get asset, you can zoom in, you can zoom out, but like it's essentially rendered to a texture. That one's would be pretty simple to add. We just integrate library, it turns into texture, it pipes in nicely. The fancier way to implement it is actually convert, like render it in VR, like render in real time as actual vector graphics. For example, converting it to like geometry instead of shaders. And if you were to do that, it would like behave much better because like it wouldn't be a texture. So like if you like look really close, it would like still be like probably seamless. But implementing that integrated to the graphics pipeline, that's like significant amount of work, especially into a VR pipeline where it can be looking for like different angles and so on. The problem is the SVG is like it has a lot of features. Like there's like blending modes. You can like it can apply like blurring to the effects and so on. And oftentimes like a lot of it is designed for 2D screen presentation, not necessarily for 3D. So making that work with 3D pipeline, that would be particularly kind of challenging.
One thing you can actually do in the meantime, as a sort of approximation, at least for monochrome SVGs, is you can actually convert them into a multi-sign distance field like I did with one of our icons here.
Yeah.
You can get kind of vector-like graphic rendering with this, where it's like infinitely sharp with a really, really low texture resolution. So that might be something to look into.
But even that, like, that has, limitations because, like,
Yes.
we're essentially converting to a texture, which gives you sharp lines. But, like, if there's a very fine detail that's less than, like,
Yeah.
the size of pixels, it doesn't work. You'll lose the detail. So, like, there are, like, approaches like that, but, like, they all have, like, their, like, limitations.
Yeah, I just meant in the meantime.
Yeah. It's like, but the thing is, like, we probably wouldn't do, like, a limited implementation like that
Oh
ourselves
no,
because, like,
I'm not saying
it's
we would.
very it's very like, use case specific.
Yeah.
Like supporting the SV shell as a whole, that's a lot.
Yeah.
Next question is from Missing. Will there ever be official way to equip Avatar tool directly from inventory via Flex or components? Yes, very likely. One of the things we want to do with the inventory when it gets reworked is make it so you can have, your main inventory, but you can also have like, sort of quick access hotbar. So you can, for example, put it on your, hand, like you have like a quick facet, if you're in desktop, you can literally have like hotbar at the bottom where you can like put your favorite tools and have them bound by keys. So there's probably gonna be some mechanisms to handle that. Next question is from Sox Defenic. Sox Defenic is asking, if you had to start over or advise younger you, knowing everything you do now, would you still start with Unity and work towards splittening, or would you try to build everything from scratch to begin? I would probably still use, I don't know actually if Unity, I might have like used a different engine, but I would have definitely based it on some engine, because one of the things, building everything from scratch, it takes a lot of time. And even as with, as many issues that we have with Unity, anime stuff like we're dealing with, um, it still was kind of beneficial to go that way, because we could get, very early versions of the software, kind of bootstrap. We didn't have to worry about some of the kind of basics like rendering, and so we could focus on what made it unique, and then over time replace pieces that were in Unity with Froox engine. It happened, for example, with the UI framework. It happened with a lot of others. And what it allows us to do is have a functional platform that, yes, has issues, but it's functional, you can play it. Versus if we were building everything from scratch, it would take that amount of time to get something functional. And for the entire length of the development, we would not have something you can download and play, which means we wouldn't be able to get support from the community to continue the development, which means it might not happen at all. So the only thing I would probably say is you maybe use a different engine. It's most of the things I would kind of advise is just kind of the accumulated knowledge and know-how on how to approach certain things and how to kind of prepare them, because a lot of the development, there were some dead ends, there were some approaches that didn't work right, and I was I'm gonna replace them with something that's works way better. So it would be mostly that, but would very likely still be using some kind of third-party kind of software to handle, or engine to handle the parts that were not the important focus at the time to get something working. So yeah, might not be Unity. I don't remember what actually was available back when I started, but probably would have used something. Next question is from Sox Defenic. Sox Defenic is asking, do you think the dynamic nature of Resonite is a trade-off with performance versus something like VRChat where everything goes through compilation, optimization step before making it into the game? I don't think it has to be. The only thing you have to do is change your approach to things. Like a lot of the stuff with Resonite, it's kind of designed to work with a dynamic nature, but also be able to optimize stuff. And one of the cool examples is the asset variant system, because the asset variant system, when you think about for example Unity, if you import a bunch of assets, you have that a long processing step, where you cannot even use the editor. And it's because it's making essentially variants of assets for the specific specific platform that you're targeting at the time. And it's it's kind of the process. It prevents some of that interactivity, because you cannot literally cannot use it for time. Versus on Resonite, the asset variant system was designed in a way where it's a lot more dynamic, a lot more adaptive. So if you import something, the asset variant system might decide to do just very light compression on the assets you brought in, maybe even no compression at all as you use them. But then the compression happens in the background. And especially if you upload it to the cloud, it happens in the cloud, and the cloud will generate all the different variants kind of on the fly. And the client, as it's like, as people are loading those assets, it'll look, okay, it'll be like, I would like this version, like that's gonna be most optimal for the platform. Maybe the cloud goes, I don't have this version, but I have these versions. And the client's gonna be, okay, I'm gonna load these versions for now. Or maybe like, I don't like any of these versions. I'm gonna load the raw version, which is less efficient. But I know that like, probably within an hour, there's gonna be an optimal version. So it loads that one like, like next time. And the system is kind of designed so, things are still very dynamic, but they also like, there's like these processes that like make optimized versions. And we can do that for lots of other features too, where you build something and then like apply like there's like an optimization pass that happens, and a lot of like stuff in Resonite, it's sort of designed as sort of like being like an add-on. So like you have the base of it, and like then a lot of the editing stuff is like kind of on top that kind of interacts with stuff, but there's like kind of mechanisms to work with it. So I don't think it has to be trade-off. There's definitely places where it is trade-off right now. But I think there's approaches to making applying essential optimizations there as well. You also have like things like protoflags, which actually does some basic kind of compilation. There's like stuff we can do as well to kind of amortize a lot of that kind of cost, like by, for example, like doing sort of like tiered compilation where like you only get basic one, like when you're like editing stuff. So like it's maybe it doesn't run the most optimally, but like you can just mess with the code and like have immediate results. And once you start messing with it, it gives the system time to make a heavier optimized version and then run that. And there's actually an approach that's even used, in modern JIT compilers where they do call it a tiered compilation, where the compiler at first it will just in order to be agile, it's gonna do like very quick compilation, one with like minimal optimizations, but one that gets the program running as fast, and then looks, okay, this code is running a lot, but the code is still running. I'm gonna make much more heavily optimized version. Once it's finished compiling that version, it swaps it out, and now it runs much faster. So generally, a lot of stuff for Resonite, will take that kind of approach. And the cool thing is, like, with the tiered JIT compilers, they can, like, there are benchmarks where they can beat native code. Because one of the things they can do is they can take advantage of, information that's only known as runtime. Like, for example, knowing that particular method is being called, let's say, 99% of the time is being called with a specific argument. So the compiler can actually compile a version when that argument is a constant, and that lets it optimize away big pieces of code and achieve better performance versus the native code that's compiled ahead of time. That wouldn't be able to make that optimization because it doesn't know, because it all happens before the code runs. So I would even say in some cases, like, you might end up like the dynamic system might end up like outperforming, like if it's like designed right and has right mechanisms for optimizations. The next question is from Papal team. Let's see. Papal team is asking, in the previous office hours you said that Perflex already supports custom nodes. Does this mean that you can already run custom nodes inside Perflex VM outside of Resonite? I'm aware that nested node types in assemblies, but I thought they were more placeholder skeletons until custom nodes are implemented in Resonite. No, yeah, this nested nodes, it's fully functional. There's in Protoflex project, we actually have a bunch of unit tests that use that at like nested nodes quite deeply. So that's fully functional. What essentially you have like right now is you have sort of something we call implicit nodes, which like it's a node that like is just implicit, it's not connected to any others, but it's using kind of the same mechanisms as nested nodes do. So that's all fully implemented. Like it works within Protoflex VM. It's just not integrated with Resonite.
So I couldn't hack in like a nested node into the data model or anything.
You can, but like it's not gonna do stuff like without a lot of extra code. You need to like finagle it so it like does things.
Okay.
This question's from BD underscore. I know you've mentioned in the past that the goal for splittening TM is to run one process per session. Do you anticipate immediate milestone where unit is broken out, but all sessions run the same process, or are you going directly for end process model? So yeah, we're just doing two process model for the first phase. We're sort of like following approach that Firefox took, like where the web browser they first like split up like one process, and then like over time they keep like breaking into smaller processes. So for this phase, it's just gonna be the render, and then it's gonna be the rest of the engine. Over time, we do wanna split it so like each world, for example, is its own session. Even some subsystems are gonna be its own process. So that's gonna happen like later in time, but right now it's just gonna be two processes. Um, like the render is gonna be its own process, and the engine is gonna be its own process. It's gonna sort of like gradual approach because that lets us get the results we care about, which is the use of Net9 faster, but also the additional splitting is gonna help like with performance too and with optimizations too by um, with security by kind of sort of splitting each session into its own thing. Next question is from BD underscore. Post splitting, will asset load status as reported by loaders or presence of data in mesh statistics immediately accurately reflect the unity load status or only Froox engine load status? I'm hoping doesn't break systems that try to avoid avatars appearing naked during mesh loading by waiting for closed mesh to fully load before enabling renders. Yeah, that shouldn't change at all. Like the splitting shouldn't change any sort of like behaviors. Next question is from Orange. Orange is asking, what is the purpose of newly added global option audio output? Is there a specific use case that cannot be achieved with other parametric combinations? I'm actually not sure, because there's like a lot of changes to the audio output. So it's possible you can just achieve global with other modifications, but what it essentially does, it sort of like overrides everything and says like, this audio effect is global, meaning it has the same volume everywhere. Like, there's like no attenuation. One of the things with audio is each source, it can like, use any sort of audio shape. Whereas like right now, there's only two shapes. There's like a sphere shape and there's like infinite shape. But we can add more, like like a cone or a cardioid and so on. So eventually, there's gonna be actually like selection where you can pick different shapes, and global is gonna be like one of them. But right now, it's mostly just got a reminder like of like the development process. So it might be sort of superfluous right now. I'd have to kind of check it. But it pretty much forces the shape to be like the global one, so it kind of skips a lot of kind of calculations. Um, Yeah, it's definitely gonna be more efficient if you actually want global effects because you can sort of achieve the other things with the other shapes, but it still might run like some of the calculations. But it's gonna make more sense over time too. Next question is from Abysmal. Um, if you think about features such as snappables, avatar anchors, fishbones that have had a big impact on how alive interactive the engine feels and have become staples for creators in Resonite, what other small but significant features have you thought of and would like to implement in the future? Well, one of them is actually the one that got implemented now, which is the spatial variables, because I feel it's going to help add a lot of like sort of spatial interactivity between avatars and things. But it was already like implemented. Another one that kind of comes to mind is it's a right extension of the snappable system. It's more like a wearable system where you could, for example, specify, some points on the body. For example, say this is where the head is, this is the top of the head, this is the sides of the heads, and then like if I grab a brush, let's see, where's my brushes? Oh, there's brushes. Geometry line. So say like, you make like a prop. One of the things is like, right now props are not very interchangeable. Like for example, Sarah's glasses. And like, if you like want to like just take them and put them on the avatar, you need to calibrate it per avatar for each of the props. But say like, you have like a hat and you say like, this goes to the top of the head, this is side of the head. And then on the avatar itself, you have like an avatar, like your head, snoot, you have eyes. It's not very good drawing, but you essentially say, this is the top of the head, this is the sides of the heads. The system wouldn't be able to figure out, okay, it needs to position like this, scaled like this, so it kind of fits on that avatar. So there'll be sort of like, an advanced snapping system where you can parameterize, different parts of the body, same like, for example, like say shirts, clothes, you say like this is where the arm is, this is how thick it is, and the system will figure out how to place it so it properly fits on the avatar. I think that kind of system like would be really cool, for people who make props, because you don't need to calibrate per avatar. You literally just say, this is how it fits. You put it on and it just kind of snaps in the right place. All that needs to happen is that the prop is calibrated to that system, and then the avatar is calibrated, and then the avatar will just work with any properly calibrated prop without having to like, calibrate every single combination of like, avatar and prop. So I think that one would be probably one of the most impactful systems that would like allow people to just like exchange clothes and just find something, plop it on your avatar, make it like very easy to like wear things. Next question is from Marsmanchi. I don't know, I never know how to pronounce the name. Sorry, Marsmanche. With Keynes having left the team, what will happen to PBS consolidation? Have any plans for moving the cells changed in any way? It kind of has changed a bit. We're kind of like so there's like two things for the PBS consolidation right now. We don't know fully sure yet, because the project has been kind of in limbo for a long time. And we kind of need to like look at it, like see what state is it in. And kind of decide based on that. So I don't have an answer for that right now. For like plans to moving source, we're sort of like looking at multiple options. We're like looking, at like different like renders, like from open source projects that we could take. We might end up like going with Beve. We might like if Gins ends up like implementing source in time for when we want to switch to a rendering engine. We might end up like adopting that work, since he plans for that to be open source. But depending, what state that is in, we might go, in a different direction. We might either end up like, integrating directly against like, making our own integrations, say for example with the Bevy render, because it has a lot of features we want. We were looking at stuff, like Godot render, like see like can we extract it from it and use it, but there's a lot of stuff that we need that's currently missing. There's other like frameworks. We were looking at like for example the Stride engine, which is like an engine implemented fully in C#. It also has like a clustered rendering, but there's a lot of kind of variables there. So there's like options, and we'll kind of we'll keep kind of looking into those. And the closer we kind of get like to actually want to switch to the rendering engine, we'll make like our decision there. Next question is from Red. Oh, this one's a big one. Red is asking, why is one gray? What's the gray drive manage type? How does it differ from typical drives? Do we have idea? Why does it not act the same as piece just placed there? Real force being weird. I'm not actually sure. Usually gray is like means like it's invalid or something is wrong, but also might be just a bug. So I don't really know in this case. I don't know how you're driving it or what is it doing. It also looks like you might be like using mods in that one, so like it might be messing with something, so it's kind of hard to say. And we got the last one from Discord. Bitcrack is asking, do you think memory sharing or just splitting Resonate into two processes in general could cause issues with Proton? I don't think it's probably gonna cause too many issues. Like there's the memory sharing mechanisms, they exist in some form, in different processes, and we'll probably Sire use Linux every day. So we'll have testing of these processes as we kind of go.
Yep. Generally, like the thing with like memory mapped files and whatnot, like memory shares on Linux, is that there's no such thing really as like a named memory share. So like on Windows, you can declare like a memory map file with like a name and then access that file from a different process with the same name. But on Linux, you actually have to back it with a file first. And then anything that wants to access that memory share will have to access the file, which will then just access the memory share.
Yeah. There's mechanisms to make it work. And it's also web browsers kind of use this mechanism a lot. So in certain approaches. So with this, that's all the questions from Discord, which means we can get to the questions from the chat. So and we've got quite a bit, so it might take a little bit to go through them. There's a few. So let's get started on those. Let's see how we're on time. So Red Neko is asking Schnoppet. Like I said, my Schnoppet is that Grant wasn't here to make his Schnoppet.
Yeah, that's my Schnoppet.
That's the Schnoppet. Aki Spread was asking, can I ask a question? Yes, you can. And this is how you ask it. Next one is from Red Neko. Is Froox sick? I'm kind of sick. I think I kind of caught a bug from some people, and plus it's everything's blooming right now, and everybody's cutting grass, which is also triggering my allergies. So I'm I literally just downed, well, not down, but I had a Dayquil before the stream because my throat was really hurting. Next question is from Epigeeson. When do you think work on the splitting will all occur? I am expecting you to patch some issues with audio system before then. Yeah, probably sometime next week. I'll probably spend the first day or two patching up some audio issues and adding some things, but pretty much the idea is to get started on splitting as soon as I can. There's also some questions, skipping that one. Unskull Wolf, do you or other developers use client mods? Also, could any popular or very useful mods be integrated officially? So I don't really use any mods myself. I'm more of a. I'm if I need something, I will add it. I want, if something annoys me enough, I want to be okay, I'm prioritizing that now and implementing it. So that's kind of my approach. I know someone do Siri will makes mods. So
yes, I use mods myself. Mostly mods that I make, but I do use a couple that I know have been vetted to be safe.
There's one thing is the mods can potentially be malicious. So we if you want to use them officially, if anybody, essentially we have a process. If anybody on the team wants to use mods, we need our engineering team to vet them, make sure there's nothing malicious, which adds a little bit kind of burden too. For integrating officially, very unlikely because usually the way mods approach things is very hacky, and for anything that essentially goes into the engine, one of the big concern is the long-term maintainability, and sometimes mods don't really care about that super much. So that kind of code wouldn't get accepted, because once it's in, we have to maintain it essentially forever. Which means we need to make sure it works with all the rest of the code. We need to make sure it keeps working when we change other parts of the code, and it can add a lot of burden. So usually for things to be implemented officially, it needs to be designed to be very long term. Next question. Oh, this is the same one from Juan is about being sick. Next question is from Kite VT __. And they're asking, So I'm on Quest 2, and I was curious on if the controls when editing wars. I try moving around, I can only move with one analog stick. The rotation is mixed with the move around one stick because the two opposite analog stick will be smoothed out or fixed. So this one's a tricky issue because, like with the Quest, you only have the joysticks, and the joystick can either be used for moving or it can be used for the tool. Because if the tool uses it, then if you try to use the tool and it also used for moving, then as you use the tool, you'll be moving around, and vice versa. If you try to move around, you will be using the tool. So it cannot be used for both at the same time. So it's kind of tricky, like what do we do at that point? Because like only one gets to use them. For some tools, we might move it like to different buttons if it doesn't need a joystick, so that will kind of help. But if the tool does need a joystick, then there's not really super much you can do. The only thing with tools is if you take the tool, you can like put it down very easily if you just click on your tool shelf. So there's a way to quickly park it, that frees up the thing, and then you click on it again and equip it again. So you can kind of swap it back and forth. Uh, but essentially, it's an issue with having a limited amount of controls. The Chip Forge is asking, the chip will IPC between Froox and Unity be documented so community implement their own heads? We don't have any plans for public facing documentation for this. It's an internal kind of mechanism, and doing the documentation would add a lot of kind of overhead that would make the implementation take longer. I might share some of the design notes and such in devlog and so on, but we don't have any plans for official documentation for that. It's not really being designed as something that's community sort of extensible. It's an internal part of our engine. So if you do want to implement own stuff, you're mostly on your own for that. Next question is from Juan V. Alar, my question is, do you guys know if there's a fix to Resonite crashing if hand tracking is enabled on some systems like Quest Pro? If there's no fix yet, since this has been happening for a long while, I suppose that there will be fix in the future, but not soon yet. Oh, my headset is also dying. This one's kind of tricky because this actually is a bug in Unity, and it happens in native code that we don't have access to. So it is one of those things where we can't really fix it. And if we wanted fix, we would have to change version of Unity, but we also can't change version of Unity because that will break a lot of other things. So there's not really a clear solution to it right now, unfortunately. And it's kind of sucky situation, but it's kind of what it is. So yeah. If anybody wants to look into it too, in the GitHub issue, I actually posted the stack trace of things, so people are able to investigate, and if you find something that could help, that would be helpful. But so far, we haven't had anyone kind of come up with anything. The only approach is is we do move away from Unity because that get rid of the bug that way, or maybe we could get help from Wolf from their system to because it kind of happens when you do switch to hand tracking. There's it essentially says oh, those controllers you're using, they got disconnected. Now there's new controllers that connected, and Unity tries to fetch features for those controllers, and it does invalid access exception, and that crashes the process. But we also don't know if it's something that Valve would be willing to do is make improvements to how their kind of mechanism kind of works for implementing that to kind of work around this. Next question is from Nuki-kun. Nuki-kun's asking, so I'm having optimization issue. In Avatar Station, the mirrors all work fine for me in VR, even at high resolution VR. In Underwater Lounge, however, the same mirrors over my 1050 Ti, even at low resolution, leading to glitchy headset view. Is there any idea what's going on there? Any advice on how I might optimize them beyond just FarClip override? You need to optimize what's in your world essentially. Mirrors, like they're like one of those features, like where the mirror itself doesn't have that much of a cost, but it costs what it renders, and what it renders depends on the world. So we have like just a few basic things in your world, and the mirror is gonna be pretty fast. But if we have like say thousands or dozens of thousands of objects and lots of lights in the world, then the mirror is gonna get heavy because when it renders, it has to render all of those all over again, and actually two times for each eye. So the cost of mirror depends a lot on the specific world and the stuff that's in it. One of the things that can also affect it are the lights. Try disabling, the per pixel lighting because for most things, like we Resonate will use the third pipeline, which makes it efficient to render lots of lights. However, mirrors they don't work with units as the third because they use something called a skewed matrices. Essentially, matrix that is not like flat with the camera, but it's sort of like skewed, and that forcibly uses the forward rendering pipeline, which makes lights way less efficient. So you have lots of lights, special per pixel lights, that's gonna make them run, slower too. So reducing those or disabling the per pixel lights on the mirror can help. Uh, Next question is from Nikon. Nikon's asking, to what degree does the new audio system utilize multithreading? At what point does process kick in? Advice for optimizing. So, it's multithreading is not really something that kicks in. It just works. It's there. Audio is very multi-threaded, like very heavily multi-threaded. I even implemented like a concurrent buffer mixing that like is lock-free mechanism to mix multiple buffers. So you actually have like the system when it starts, it finds out all the work it needs to do, and then like it runs a bunch of jobs that run in parallel to like render the audio, apply the effects. There's like some parts like the binaural audio, which that it's wrapped around the lock because unfortunately the Steam audio is not thread safe, but pretty much every other part of the process is. Um, and uh, it's what's the word? It's essentially like we have multiple threads all computing the audio, and like as the threads are finished, they will be mixing in the results together, and the mechanism is also very efficient. It's like where it uses the log-free buffer mixing. The audio system is not really something you optimize. It essentially has like a fixed limit on the number of audio sources. So like it needs to be kept like under a certain time for every user. Because if it takes too long, you start end up like hearing pops. The audio is gonna pop. So there's like a limit set, and essentially you can't really go beyond that limit. So like it's not really something you optimize on your end. That's something we do on our end. Wikigan's also asking, you probably said this already, what word is this? Looks like one of the islands of the Cloud Home. This is Dante's Sky Island camp. It's one of the MMC entries, technically a disqualified one because like Dante's a developer. But Dante just wanted to make like a nice little submission, so it's very cozy, small world. I kind of picked it because like we're kind of running late and I'm kind of not feeling super well, so I need something simple. Nokikun is asking, someone told me that when you interact with Collider, it interacts with the surrounding colliders too, meaning intersecting mesh colliders interact with each other. When you interact with one of them, is this correct? How to fix optimize? I don't know what you mean exactly by that. Like colliders generally interact with nearby colliders. Uh, and it's not like when you interact with them, like they just do. Like if like that's kind of their point is like figure out like are there any colliders nearby that are kind of intersecting or touching. So they'll be doing that. Uh, I don't really I don't really quite understand the question though. So like it's like beyond that. Like if you want to optimize that, like just have pure colliders or if colliders that don't interact with each other. Next question is from Nuki-kun. I noticed some material types don't have access to all the transparency types or other aspects. For example, dual-sided doesn't have additive, multiplicative transparency, only alpha clip, alpha blend. Why is that? Would it be best asked to implement those, especially with a split from Unity happening? So the reason is pretty much because like it takes time to implement it, and we haven't taken the time to do it for those. It would kind of depend on the specific shader. You're always free to make the request, and we'll kind of look at it. The split shouldn't affect it much, but like the eventual replacement of a render could. But it depends on the specific shader. Like we need to like look at the code and see like how much this would complicate adding these modes in. Missing Nerd is asking, do you look at particle modes when trying to find new features, or are you fine with some things staying external modes forever? I don't really look at mods super much for features. It's more like looking at a GitHub request, which can be based on mods. When people just for some functionality that's popular, it kind of depends on the thing. Like I usually don't look like if it's a mod or no. More like does this feature make sense for us to implement like natively to Resonite, and is it aligned with what we're doing? So there's like some things where we will make official implementations for stuff that mods are doing, but there's like some things where we're like this is not something we'd really do, just use the mod. And it's kind of like one of the things with the mods is you're able to like customize the experience so it kind of fits with what you want. And it's not just stuff that's ours. Uh, you know, because while like have mods, it lets you kind of like gotta change the experience in a way you want, even if it like it's not the direction we want to go. Next questions from Nikikon. Spatial variables sound like a great tool for culling and other optimizations. Is there a way? You intend to encourage world builders to do that? We don't really have like we don't. I don't think we have like any plans to like encourage people to do that. Like I think people are just gonna do it. Maybe like some
it's
of the
cool. You should.
yeah, it's there's like gonna be some stuff like like our team is gonna like utilize it, so like maybe people can use that as an example. But like it's just a feature. It's there. You can use it. So
We don't want to make you use it.
yeah. Next question from Media underscore. Post splittening, will you bypass Unity for VR input entirely in reference to hand tracking crash bug? Probably not. That's very integrated with the VR SDK. So since Unity is still gonna be doing the VR rendering, that's gonna be handling the input too. I don't think like we can kind of read out the inputs like without that. Next question is from Rikikon. Is there a material, maybe a way to use fog, which just applies a filter that gets darker or more saturated the further behind things are? You probably have to use fog because it's like depth based. There's also like the depth material, so you could maybe try experiment with like the blend modes on that. Maybe it could like that could look like a neat effect, but I don't know from the top of my head. Next question is from Ultra Wide Gamer. With the splitting coming soon, Resonate having issues with Unity and latest information related to gains, would in the future, because of IPC implementation, would it be relatively easy to switch to something like the latest LTS of Unity? No, that doesn't really help with that. The main issue with switching to latest Unity is essentially all of the shaders will break, all of the rendering features will break. Like deferred rendering doesn't work with VR. Like a lot of the rendering features are just straight up broken, or don't work, or don't have equivalents. Which makes it hard for us to switch. So it the IPC doesn't really help it, unfortunately. We'll probably still be like switching to like a custom rendering engine that's like gonna be based on something else. we're very unlikely to be like investing much time into switching like into a new version of Unity.
No amount of work we do will make Unity not suck.
Yeah. Nuki-kun continuing, we are trying to get a fig like that, but I can't figure it out. I know how to do in GL, but doesn't have a GL, so yeah, I would suggest trying like none of the things I suggested. Like I don't know from the top of my head if it works or no. And the last question is there right now is from the Red Neko. The Red Neko is asking, I was curious, is there any chance we could get some more material property blocks? There's two that would be hugely helpful. I'll better call it primary texture scale offset, or was that more of a instinct before I left the team? And we can always make the request for it, like, see if there's like a lot of interest in that. We can look into it. I mean, it's kind of like it's not too different, from any other feature request. Like if there's like significant interest in something, we will. It's more likely, we'll pick it up. And like, it doesn't. It gives like a leaving the team doesn't mean like we cannot work on these things. Like majority of the shaders that are in here, were actually implemented by me, and I did a lot of the graphical features. So like, other people, can do that kind of work as well. But that, like, that's all the questions we have. We've been going for an hour right now.
Yeah. How are you
And the
feeling?
question, I'm okay. I'm not like much like. I don't think I'll be able to just blabber about stuff. So like, if the questions dry up, like we might end up stop early. So we want to ask more questions, like ask them now. Otherwise, we might end up like ending this earlier than usual. Moonbase is asking, not necessarily asking for a release date, but is there ETA or timeline on the splittening update? I think at the very least a few weeks. I would hope like to have it done within a month or two, but like you never know some of the complexities that come with these things, so we'll see. Next question is from Ace on Twitch. Ace on Twitch is asking, do you guys plan on hiring someone else to do rendering when you have money or now that Gins is gone? We don't have any specific plans for that right now. I mean, eventually, possibly at some point, but we'll see. Also, Gran is asking, Schnopit, you're too late. It's a very late Schnopit. Okay, so that's all the questions for now. So we're gonna give it a bit, but if there's no more, I might end up early. I'm kind of congested and well.
Yeah, my throat hurts a little bit more now too.
Yeah.
I'm also sick. Hi.
Is everyone sick?
I went outside. That's how I got sick.
Oh. Okay. Alright, I had being sick, so am I. Oh, I got Ace on Twitch is asking, question for both. What is your guys' favorite features on your avatar? For me, it's the needles, maybe. Maybe it's just I like using this. I'm dead now. I also have the needles. I fix it because the hair is supposed to disappear.
I'd say child lock.
I'm a needler.
I have a child lock on my avatar so that people can't take my glasses off if they're being annoying with it.
Oh. Next questions from BD underscore. What's the opposite of Schnoppet called? What is your anti-Schnoppet? I mean, I guess that would be like, what makes you, if you already disintegrated, what makes you reintegrate? I would say is like when people use, like when people get what features are, and like they use it like in the precisely way that this was meant to be used to make something really cool and powerful. And I'm like, ooh, that's the thing. You're using it right.
Yeah.
That would be like my intention of it, I guess. Also fruit, I will reintegrate for fruit. Glitch.
When people understand that the thing that we're making is still in progress and no, we don't actually, the straw man that you're making that we are actually happy that your files are gone or something when like an issue happens is not
Yeah.
real.
I mean, that's the thing. Like one of the things I like is, like oftentimes like approach things and every attitude is like, things won't be perfect. There's gonna be issues, there's gonna be bugs, there's gonna be things that don't get done and so on. But that's the kind of nature of things. We just try to like do, the best we can and make something that's still kind of fun and sometimes it feels like people get very like, black and white about things. Like it's either perfect or it's like, it's useless. Um And most of the time, there's like a lot more kind of nuance to things, and there's a lot more kind of complexities, and things are, you know, pretty much nothing in the world is ever gonna be perfect. There's always gonna be some issues, but also it doesn't take, away the enjoyment. Um, and when people, have that kind of similar attitude, like that kind of like, this is my like one of my anti-Chanel best. That's like, like yeah, like I get it. Like there's like issues, there's like problems, there's like stuff, and like we try to do fix as many as we can, but also like it's just gonna to accept it as fact of life. There's always gonna be stuff like you won't be able to like fix or do.
Yeah.
um Next questions
No, you
from
cannot. You cannot eat the camera, Juanvi.
not this one, but you could conceivably, since this is from Resonite Essentials, you could, what was that? Oh jeez, that was a spooky sound. um this was from Resonite Essentials. So you could like attach a edible system on it and you can eat it. So theoretically, yes. Marcia says she's asking. Read this one. Sarah, how do you use your context menu? I just saw you going through like 7 menus to get the child lock.
Oh no, that one's only like 1, 2 deep. I was just flicking through my menus to see like what I had, uh, like as features that I could consider my favorite. I consider that one of my favorites, though the child lock is, so that like people aren't just constantly taking my collar off and jingling it, or taking my glasses off and stealing them or whatever. Because it's funny, but it's, I don't want it happening like all the time.
Yeah. Uh, Next question is just, well, should I update your needle to have tracking projectiles for a version of it? Maybe sometime. It's very old. Next question from Reneko. I love the spatial variable collectors. They are the best addition in a while. They still have a few bugs when I'm actually working to figure out. What's your favorite new feature when people use spatial variables for past week? So far I haven't like seen actual like applications of it, like new ones. Mostly I've seen like people just experimenting, like messing out with the system. So I'm kind of looking forward to seeing like actual like build systems with it. I've seen like some people like redo like a thing where you can like roast like marshmallows, and people do like stuff that kind of moves in a vector field and things like that. But it's like I feel like right now it's on a stage where people are just sort of experimenting with it. What Susanna, do we have like any like things you've seen?
Um, hmm. I I saw some people trying to do like gradient fields and whatever. That was pretty neat. Yeah, it's pretty cool. I love spatial like indexing stuff and whatever, like spatial hash maps. Like those are so cool. I want to see someone make a spatial hash map.
Very cool. Next question is from BD_. How does one get into firing groups for Blood on the Clock Tower on Resonite? So for that one, you essentially need to know, like right now it's in closed beta, so you need to know a player. If you know a player, they can invite you into the game. They have like a system for it where like they put a name and they send out like invite waves now and then. So you could like poke somebody you know and see if they can get you in. Next one is from Ason Twitch 17. While many games like VH and Roblox have it, do you guys have a plan on adding social group system? I'm actually not sure what exactly that this does. Thank you, Kip, for a subscription. Wow. Do you know what it could mean by the social group system?
I honestly don't know. Let me see here.
It might help to elaborate what kind of functionality you want. Like sometimes, like when you just like say like this feature from other software, I'm like I don't actually know what it means exactly because we do have like groups system, but I don't know if that does the same things that you want it to.
I feel like I would need to be more
Just,
immersed in the culture to understand it. On the surface, it just kind of looks like a similar thing as like a Steam group or something.
yeah, I need to elaborate a bit. Like I was saying, one feature messaging whole group. Yeah, that might be kind of cool. Like that is one thing I would like want to do with a messaging system, kind of expand it so you can essentially send messages on anything. You could send them within groups. You could send them, on words and items like comments. So that that would be a thing. But there probably is more functionality. So it kind of helps like if you're more explicit, with the functionality you want because like we might not be familiar with the feature you're asking for. Landur 43 is Resonite on PS4. No, it's not. It's probably not gonna be. Any more questions? We're gonna run out again. Boah.
My throat hurts.
My sinuses hurt. Redneck was asking, how's Prime doing on the Excel version of Froox engine? You have to ask him. And one was asking, why are you so cute? Oh. Cuteness doesn't die of the beholder. And you hold all the
born
bees.
that way. I was born that way. It's just a natural attribute of being. You can get it by reflection, actually.
Reflection? Like in C#?
Yeah. Yeah, you can reflect my cute attribute.
Oh, yeah, there we go. It's a part of the .NET standard.
Just try not to do it on mono, or otherwise it might be slow.
It's got a snippet. But I don't really have I don't really have any more questions. So like if more questions that pop in a bit, like we'll probably. Oh, there's a question. Elaborate on social group. Basic feature where people will be able to join a group, while owners matters will be able to announce stuff like event starts. Okay, so there's a few things there. So right now for events we don't have calendar, but it's something we want to add. And once that's added, like that will also work with the groups. We definitely do want to expand the group system so you can be like you can follow the group, like you can be like a sort of like subscriber to it or something like that. Like essentially like add more kind of functionality where you don't need to be actual managed member of the group. You can kind of sort of follow it. So for example, if a group that's like say like a this organization or something, the group has its like actual members who are like, part of the group, and have people who follow it, like, the sort of public profile of it. And you could like, have it like whatever way you want, but you could have, sessions that like, are visible to members of the group, to the subscribers of the group. You could like, have events that are visible as well. So yes, that's definitely like a lot of stuff you would like want to add like along these lines. Like I do want to expand the group system a lot, like, and make it like a lot more versatile. So it's not, just for kind of collaboration, but it's also like, this is like an organization, and we're like, we want to have like public facing like worlds and posts and things, which is actually another thing. Like I would want to add a system for like making posts, so you can have sort of like a feed, and like you can like if you're a creator, you can post like announce like when you make new stuff or when you're like working on something, and people could like follow you and add more kind of social aspects to Resonite. Next question's from Ozzy. Ozzy asking, may I ask, explain the new log fall-offs? Like, what is the difference between clamped and fall? So it might be easiest if I draw it. So they're all logarithmic fall-offs. So generally they'll be logarithmic, but it depends how they treat the max distance. So if I draw like a graph, so you have like the minimum distance, it doesn't fall until then, and then it starts falling off. So for the, I'm actually make it a bit thicker, so here this one, and it starts falling off. Let me redraw that. And it's like falling off logarithmically, and I'm really poor at drawing right now. So if it's infinite, then it just keeps falling off. It never quite reaches zero, but like it keeps falling off. If it's clamped, if this is your maximum distance, it'll essentially stay at this forever. It'll never fall below the value that it's at the max distance. And then fade off, what fade off does, there's actually a separate sort of linear fall off. And as it gets like, there, it actually follows like linearly at the end. So like it kind of, instead of it like, just stopping abruptly, it's just gonna, it fades out. And like you won't be able to hear it past the maximum distance at all. So I hope that kind of explains those. Darky Sabertooth is asking, will we eventually get official Resonite app for sending emails to either other people on the phone? I would like to have one. I think that's like a really good kind of natural expansion to like make it easier for people to interact and turn Resonite into more of a social platform, like more general one. Right now, like we don't have the bandwidth for it, so I don't know like when we're going to work on it, but it's one of those things that I think is going to be very important for us in the future. Next question is from Menchuk. Are there any plans to add more accessibility options into Resonite? I can imagine a lot of solutions that are used in 2D applications were pretty hard to implement for platform as flexible, dependent as user creations as Resonite. Yeah, there's always stuff like we're looking for. Like I don't really like want any like specific kind of examples. Like it mostly depends, like what people kind of suggest and what people ask for. We would definitely want to add like things like, for example, for photo sensitive users, where it's like stuff to selectively not render some things, so it can be like if content is properly tagged. Anything that's, for example, flashy visual will not render for that user. So things like that. Adding like kind of features to make like things easier. Like there's always like little things here and there that can be done. It's not like any single thing. But we're always like on the lookout, and we oftentimes like prioritize accessibility features. Where we normally wouldn't prioritize a feature. Next question is from Ace on Twitch. Will the rendering switch give more performance than Unity? Also, how would the Unity SDK work if you guys are running different rendering engine? I remember you guys talking about using SDK that will support multiple engines, so I'm curious how that will work. It should give more performance because we want to like Unity uses like we're using defer right now because it works with lots of lights, but it like has some drawbacks, some performance impacts, and there's like much better approaches now, like clustered forward, for example, that can render even more lights and has even more flexibility. Having like more modern pipeline, also like one that uses Vulkan, for example. So we would expect it to like help a lot with performance. Uh, with SDK, the way the SDK actually gonna work, uh, it's gonna be sort of like sort of like a document object model, like DOM, that you can manipulate over like a TCP or something like that. It'll be like a library to kind of work with it. So the Unity SDK will just connect to like Resonite and just communicate the data that way, same like any other engine. So it doesn't actually need to be running the engine. Maybe it comes bundled with like a headless to kind of handle some stuff for you, but the engine is no longer actually running in that part. Like the SDK doesn't need that. Next question is from K. Would a Dinvar field hook combo node be possible? I don't know what you mean by that. We generally don't do node combos because we just kind of like, we can just, if you can combine multiple nodes to make a functionality, we just let you combine the nodes.
Uh-huh. I don't know what they would want from that though.
Yeah. I don't quite understand. Next question is from Ozzy. Was there anything interesting or even frustrating you learned when working on audio? Well, the frustrating part was like the Steam audio not being thread safe, which it looked like it was thread safe from the documentation, but it actually was not. And I kind of decided with the assumption that it's thread safe, and it like wasn't. The documentation wasn't very clear about that, so like that was kind of frustrating. Interesting. I don't super know. It's the other part like was frustrating is like doing all the timing and everything to make sure like it kind of works well, piping stuff in and so on. Because now we're kind of like sending the audio to audio device ourselves, and we need to make sure the timing works right. Like the threads are like not getting starved and just kind of messing around. But like it didn't feel any particularly worse, I guess. The interesting, I don't know, interesting parts is mostly just kind of learning some of the kind of like differences, like how some stuff is handled in Unity. Actually, interesting part in Unity is like I originally interpreted wrong. I thought like audios will actually have like maximum range and it will just kind of stop, but it just kind of go infinitely for most of them, which was like I was like, what? That's a little bit strange. The other part is like some parts are like for example the reverb. Started like a really good job like matching like integrating like zeta reverb. Um, and it kind of replaces the reverb zones, but we cannot actually make it sound the same because what Fmod uses it's like their own thing, and there's not much documentation on it. So we only found like reverb that's free that sounds good and like matched it so it has a similar vibe, which works well enough, but we're not able to get it like 1-to-1. Well, actually one thing that worked interesting. One thing I was kind of thinking, kind of tricky, is the Doppler effect, because I thought like you have to like have a mechanism where it samples ahead and behind and so on. But I was like, why don't I just use pitch shifting algorithm? And Sarah integrated one for me for that. It actually works really well. Like it sounds really good. It works with any audio source, and it kind of just simplified the whole process. I don't have to worry about like any of the sampling ahead. Because for example, with the user voice, you cannot sample ahead because the user has literally not made the sound yet. And you can also, do other stuff like pitch shift their voice now. So it's kind of, there's, funny stuff.
Yeah,
I've seen
I
people
can start
doing like
sounding like
helium.
this. I
Oh
can
my
start
god.
sounding like this when I turn my voice down, or I can sound like this when I turn it up.
Yeah. Helium. I've already seen people like make like helium stuff, like super breathe it in and it makes your voice high pitched. so people have like fun with it. And that was kind of surprising to me because I was kind of I wasn't half expecting the pitch shift to not work for Doppler, but it works really well. Even though it's not fully like physically accurate, it works fine. Like I would say even sounds better than like actual Doppler.
Yeah, it sounds like real Doppler, even though
Yeah.
it's like not changing the speed.
Yeah. So I was like, I'm just gonna like leave it at this. I'm not gonna bother with the other approaches for Doppler. Next question is from Minchuk. Minchuk is asking, would you consider adding more nuanced levels of contacts in Resonite? Having everyone that I meet Resonite I want to connect with again on the same priority as my friends feels kind of weird. Two, being able to add nodes to contact like you can in Discord would be a great feature. For example, often have issues remembering where I meet someone. Yeah, that's actually one of the reasons like we named it contacts is because it's neutral. And what we want to do with the contacts UI rework, which I do recommend checking the GitHub issue because it has a bunch of like ideas and stuff, that's gonna happen with it. One of the things is you will be able to tag people, so you can tag somebody as a close friend or acquaintance, or a workmate or something. And then the context nodes that we also think we would want to add, so you can add nodes to each people. And when you host sessions, so you can, for example, say this session is visible not to all of my contacts, but only to contacts that are tagged close friend. If you don't feel like hanging out with wider group. So yes, like we do want to like expand this in the future. That's gonna happen with the contacts UI rework. Ozzy's asking combo question: what is the first on the chopping block for a splittening? Assuming this wasn't asked before. There's like few things I probably gonna be doing first. One of them actually started looking into already is like mesh upload. So I'm gonna like use like more of the sort of flatten the mesh into like a buffer so it can be kind of swap. But we're also gonna move some of the smaller pieces like leap motion library, move that like fully to Froox engine, but it's like relatively small. So I'm
LOD
gonna move all the
component.
smaller pieces. Second,
LOD component.
yeah. Well, it's not like a chopping block. Like it's more like what gets processed. LOD is probably later one. Like what will probably happen first is just move all the remaining smaller pieces over, and then redesign how Froox engine, how Froox engine and Unity sort of communicate for the data. And part of it, is the mesh stuff. Textures are already kind of like over buffers, so that's kind of fine. And designing the IPC mechanisms and so on. But moving the smaller pieces first. Some of them already got moved as part of audio. Like for example, device theme analysis that got moved. There's now fully on Froox engine side. It's also been done Unity side before. I know there's like some smaller pieces like that, like we can move. I mentioned the leap motion, for example, but I'll have to kind of dig through it and figure it out. Next question is from Ace on Twitch. Would UI rework on inventory system also technically bring UI rework on file browser? They look exactly the same, even though they are different. No, they're going to be separate things. However, a lot of the things for the UI rework are going to be based on data feeds, so we're going to be using the same mechanisms for both. There might be some shared stuff between them, but like they're ultimately two different systems, so they're going to be reworked separately. They might be reworked one after another, but they're still like two separate systems. So like that's gonna kind of change stuff. Next question is from Nukikon. Can you talk about the rig animation system, which I'm told lets you bring pre-built animations? What are benefits of drawbacks versus doing by tweening rotation values? Can the same be used on multiple rigs and working NPC systems? I don't actually know what you mean. Like you can import animations, if it's just a rig animation, you just import it as normal model, and then you get like a hierarchy that's moving. But we don't have tools to like really utilize that super well. So Um, you might, you might need to do a lot of the like work for it, like on your own. Grey Fox MB is asking, is it possible to give audio ability to automatically restart when it crashes, or could the user ability manually restart it? Probably not, because like when it crashes, it means like something unexpected happened, and when something unexpected happens, we don't know what state is it in, so we don't know like is it able to restart? Like it might have corrupted a bunch of things, so we don't know. When it crashes, make sure to report it, and we'll fix the crash. But generally it's designed, so like it doesn't crash, it kind of keeps running. Also, it still might because it's like very early, but like that gets smoothed out as as time goes. It's kind of like it's a little bit similar. Like say like you crash your car, you know, is it safe to start it again? Like you don't know, maybe some critical part of the engine was damaged and it's gonna blow up if you try to start it again. Uh, Next question's from Ozzy. Ozzy's asking, actually, for those little things you mentioned for splittening, will we see those in an update before splittening, or will take longer to integrate now compared to everything is properly separated? Some of the small things we'll probably just see happen. Like I try to make it like make functional builds as fast as possible, but like the larger part, like where it's the change in the communication, that's gonna take a bit. So the smaller things probably yes, the bigger things will probably be separate. Uh, Ace on Twitch is asking, are there any community-made items that you are excited for whenever you think about future updates? For example, I'm excited for video encoder screen and browser sharing because that can open a possibility of doing Jackbox game nights on Resonite. Oh my god, yeah, Jackbox would be fun. I would want to do Jackbox on here. That's actually one of the reasons, like, for video encoder and screen sharing would be really good for that. Um, I mean, there's like, so there definitely were things like where I was like, those are cool features, like, those are cool items. Um, I feel like, we need to add functionality to make it easier to do this kind of stuff. Um, I don't remember any of the top of my head because, like, it's been like a bunch outside of, like any yourself, like, we've got examples. I probably need to like peruse through like my items and things to jog my memory on that.
I definitely am. I definitely would be excited to like do like screen sharing.
Screen share will be fun. I don't think it's any community. Like, well, there's like the ones. Actually, yeah, there's like that video player that some people use. You can just stream into.
Yeah, I do also have like my own setup that uses a nifty little software called Media MTX, which like streams an RTSP stream straight from my computer that I've like port forwarded.
Yeah.
I want sub 1 millisecond screen, or yeah, sub like tenth of a millisecond, or tenth of a second at least, screen sharing, because right now it's really delayed by like a second or two.
Yeah. I mean, it's also hard to do. Like, it's just on that latency. I can
Well,
do
yeah,
it, and
obviously. Just something more
depends how
real
much
time
time I
than,
invest into it.
2 seconds.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't remember any specific ones. I know there's been like some in the past, but I just don't remember the examples. Yeah, the Coco Live is the one like I've seen before. Uh, Next, oh no, that's the same question. But I would love to play Jackbox. I like playing Jackbox. It's one of the fun games. Could even stream those. Let me see if I find any. Uh, if I remember any of them. Oh, there's definitely like stuff like that would like benefit. Like, there's like been things where I'm like, this would like benefit from collections. It would make like things so much easier to like implement to make it more powerful. So like some games and things and like things like the photo slurper, for example, like collects photos. So it
I
doesn't
wanted to make
technically need it, but
I wanted to make a spatial hash map, but the fact that we don't have collections makes that very hard.
yeah. So he's asking, does audio have any concept of audio layers currently? Say similar how we have render context for mirrors, cameras, possible for audio listeners to listen to certain sounds, so it would be really powerful. Sort of just like concept of audio inlets that I kind of talked about last time. It's not quite the same, but I'm also gonna be adding like more mechanisms because we'll need it for the camera thing. Because we want to make it so the camera can, have its own audio. Um, and so it's able to hear even the local user fully spatialized, but also the user still doesn't hear themselves. So there's gonna be more mechanisms added there.
Hidden layer, but for audio.
As on Twitch, do you ever plan on posting IRL content whenever you're not posting Resonite, for example, when you're FC? I did post like some of it on my Blue Sky. Posted like some photos and videos and things. I don't want to post more, but I do post some. Wow. Okay. We got another real quick. Oh, Grey Fox is asking now that audio is an optional. Will be focused on bug fixing for the time being. Like I said, like there's probably gonna be like some bug fixes like over next week, and then the focus is gonna be on the splittening. I was asking how do you like reversals affecting user voice? Honestly, turn racing with immersive for different sections of world. I haven't actually used it super much myself. Like I haven't since I'm like kind of like visiting. Um, I haven't been on VR much, but so I don't know. Like I've been around a bunch.
What for like the reverb zones affecting voice?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's an overall improvement. Um, I really, really, really like it. I know that
Mm.
there's like some people who like wanted like a setting like in your settings menu to turn it off, and I'm like, that's like the break this component setting.
Okay, maybe. Ascent, which is asking, do you plan on slightly improving the locomotion system after splitting, since engine will use more modern libraries? We don't really use libraries. There's our like own system for it. I still never know what do you mean by locomotion system. Like, do you mean like movement, or do you mean the animations?
Like improve how? Because there's a lot of ways.
It's
There's a lot of
it's
ways it
very
could be
vague.
improved, but like are you talking about like bugs? Because like we can fix bugs anytime.
You need to be a little bit more specific though, because there's like multiple ways to interpret that. Okay, we don't have any more questions now. We got like
There
25 minutes. 25
there's not
minutes left,
questions.
anyways.
There's not a questions, but there are like a couple messages on the accessibility of the reverb.
I just want
No,
to
they were
ask. They
just
can ask.
yeah. If you want to ask that, ask in the question mark.
Oh, my head is gonna die soon. I'll have to see if I can grab a cable. Oh, yeah, my quest, bro, and I get Let's like drag the cable. For clarification, I remember you talking about the procedural locomotion animation were requested at the wrong time and was wondering if engine not using the night would have something to do with it. No, that has nothing to do with it. The wrong time is more like that, like we had to do it one before we rework the IK, because the IK is kind of like, not handling things as well. We don't have as control as much as we want. The other thing is we don't have animation system, which makes the kind of things complicated. So like there's like a lot of kind of big things that made it be at the wrong time. One of the things we did suggest that like nobody really reacted on is like we could open, the code for it and see like if people, because right now we don't have the bandwidth for it. But if people wanted to like, make their own contributions and see like take their stab at, improving it or reworking some parts of it, like, we'd be open to that, but nobody seems to like really be interested in that. So it's kind of, the way it is, unfortunately. Until like we get like more bandwidth on that. Lol. Let's see if I can plug my headset maybe. I thought we might like end up like ending early-ish.
I would not mind ending early, to be honest.
Yeah. The questions are kind of slowing down. There we go, it's plugged in. Yeah, I think we might ended up here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
I read that question. My brain just like glazed over.
which one? Oh, the Redneck was asking.
I don't really understand like the wording of
Oh
it.
no.
Uh-oh.
Oh jeez, my Wi-Fi died. Oh, okay, I'm back. Reneko. About no joystick was with tools. Most don't even touch the joystick. To my knowledge, none of the default tools use joystick. A stick click is only used for jumping game. Would lock joystick or something similar be reasonable, or is this just gonna be wait a long time for some random idea type of thing? So it depends on like if the tools don't use the joystick, then they shouldn't lock it. If you feel some of them lock it when they shouldn't, and they're like actual official tools, because there's also tools made in game, and there the user actually needs to mark it like doesn't use the joystick, and then then it will not lock it. But a lot of people don't check that, and then it locks it because they haven't indicated it as an. For official tools, even like if you use the joystick press, the problem there is the system right now is designed to work across different controllers. And we still have to support the Vive Vans. And the Vive Vans, it doesn't have a joystick, it's a touchpad. And the touchpad you cannot use without pressing it. So using, the joystick, the directions, and pressing it is intrinsically linked together in the system. That's kind of what I said is, we can eventually rework that system, move it to other buttons, make it more controller specific, controller specific bindings. So if you're on those types of controllers, maybe like, it uses the other button. And that could like improve things. But if it does actually use the joystick, which there are some tools that do, then, then it has to lock it. Next question is from Ace on Twitch. Do you guys plan on supporting ARKit, blend shapes, or face tracking in the future? I know that some avatars have different setups, face tracking, but don't use all blend shapes in Resonite. I would like to add support for it, so you have like, you can use it for face tracking desktop. Actually, well, it depends what do you mean, ARKit blend shapes, like, because I don't know if you're asking for like, using like an iPhone to like have face tracking desktop ARKit, or if you just mean like using like remapping stuff to ARKit blend shapes on avatar. In which case, like, we could also, like, look into that too. But it depends, what system, like, the face tracking is coming from. Reniko's asking, every single official tool locks the joystick on the quest due to stick click being part of joystick functionality. Really? Every single one?
I think it's most like the raw data tooltip I know has an option to disable the secondary, but I think it's locked on all of the official tools that aren't the raw data tool.
Okay, this one looks it. I forget what label is it for. Yeah, if it's like a tool that like locks it, that like it doesn't use it. Like if it doesn't even use the click, then it shouldn't lock it. User tool. I can make like GitHub request, then we can like check and make sure the tool's properly like marked.
I wish we had one controller standard.
Yeah. This one likes it. Yeah, I'll probably make it up like issues like for the ones that don't even use the click. If it does use the click, then it needs to lock it because then it uses it. So in that case, like there's not really a choice unless the system is reworked a bit.
Yeah.
Because that one it will need like controller specific bindings because like I said on the Vive bands, you cannot use the secondary without clicking it. So the click, like even if it is just the click, it assumes like it needs to use the whole thing.
Yeah, we can't lock users out of playing the game just because their VR hardware is a little older.
Yeah. It's one of the issues, in general. It's also like this kind of, comes with like this is similar thing that happens, with mods too, is like, where it does something and it works fine for a subset of people, but there's like, there's another subset of people where it kind of breaks things. And we as developers, we can't do that. Like, we cannot just be like, okay, like this percent of people, you don't get to play the game. When we implement things, we need to make sure they work for, as many people as we can. Or pretty much everyone, if possible. So, and it makes things a lot more difficult a lot of the times, and like say a lot more painful. But it's also like why on our end a lot of things will take like longer because we go through all of these kind of considerations. Be like, okay, does it work with this? Does it work with that? Will it work with this person? And if you make a mod, you don't care. You just make it work for yourself, and that's it. Um, it's kind of tricky, but yeah, like we would want to like have a system where it has more nuance for things, so that would kind of like improve things. But we still do have to consider like it, like even the new system, it still has to work with Vivant because there's people who use them. So yeah, like pretty much what you're saying there, like that's the thing we keep saying is that that's what we'll have to do. We have to like redesign it so it has more nuance. But it's also like it's a thing that's making it very difficult because it needs to have the nuance while still letting all the users to do all the functions. Next question is from Ace Twitch. Do you guys plan on letting players able to subscribe to Resonite direct on game instead of on website? I'm actually not sure right now if you can do that on Steam because Steam has, I think, some rules against that. So we might not be able to do that, like at least not like within the main in-game UI. We would probably want to. It'd be kind of ideal way to do it, but we might not be able to for the Steam downloads. We got 15 minutes left, so if you're gonna like any more questions, like ask them pretty much now. Otherwise, like we're gonna end the stream in a bit. Well, it's gonna be ending in 15 minutes, anyways, or sooner if there's any more questions. Okay, I think I'm gonna end it here. So
Yeah.
anyway, thank you everyone for joining and bearing with us, being sick, and sniffly. Thank you for asking all the questions. Thank you for supporting the platform. Um, and whether it's like on Patreon, whether it's on Stripe. And if you're on Patreon, consider switching to Stripe because that gives us we get more out of that. We're Patreon's taking like 15%, whereas Stripe is around 5%, so that's a huge difference. But whether support us this way or whether it's just part of the platform, socializing or making cool things, thank you so much for helping to keep this place going. And I guess we'll see you next week, unless something happens with the postponed one. So thank you very much for watching, and see you next time. Bye.
Bye.
Or